All right, welcome. We're back and we're looking at setting up the viewports in the room. In the past, I guess in old versions of GameMaker, these were called, can't recall now. But now they're called viewports. And so what you want to do is you want to open up your room. So choose your room under the resources here. And that'll bring up your room. And what you want to do is go under the properties. It's over here on the left side. And we want to enable the use of viewports. So now I've already set mine up. That's why we get the box kind of appearing on the screen right now. But this is what you need to do to get that box in the right place. First thing you want to make sure, though, is to check this box to say it's visible. That's important. And then we have to set up the camera properties and then the viewport properties. I think in the old GameMaker it was called views, and then they had port on screen. So first the view. This is what we're going to be looking at. The X and Y coordinates will be 0, 0 for the camera, and then the width is going to be 512 and the height 300. So that's this space right up here. That's how big that is. Not particularly its position. But then the question is, where's the viewport on the screen? Now our viewport's going to be a little bit larger. You'll note that it's twice as wide as our camera. So again, 0, 0 for X and Y for the viewport properties. Set the width to 1024 and the height to 600. Which object are we going to follow around the room with the camera? And that's Object Zool. So you want to choose Object Zool. And since all the other Object Zool types are children of Object Zool, it'll follow them as well. Set the horizontal border to 256 and the vertical border to 160. And then horizontal speed and vertical speed to -1. And then I think you have this set up correctly. Now when we start the game, it'll move this viewport down to follow Zool. And we'll see that here when I run the game. Alright, so here's Zool. I got him following already, but you can see now it's following Zool around. Let me get Zool to move. You can see he's running back and forth. Now we haven't done all the changes yet to get this to work yet. I want to show you that, what changes you need to make. Right now our Zool is hanging in the air when we're running back and forth. So how do we get him to actually do that, to fall to the ground? Well, we have to take a look at getting Zool to fall, and that means we have to take a look at the Object Zool Air object. So that's over here, and what I did here was I added a create event to this one. So I'm adding to the create event that's on the parent class. And the first thing I do in the create event is I assign a variable, basically the state of Zool to zState jump. That's going to be the default state, I guess, for air. And then we're going to set the gravity force to 1.5 and set the gravity direction to 270, and then clear the friction variable, and we'll set that to 0. So all those need to happen in the create event. And then we want to go to end step event. I think I put this in the wrong place. So let me double check this. Yeah, I think I have this in the wrong place. I made a step event, but this is really supposed to go in the end step event. So I'm going to copy all of this, and I'm going to move it. Let's make sure all those are selected. So copying that. And also delete this event. And what we want to do is add a end step event. I had it in the wrong spot. What do we want to put in here? Well, this is what I want to do. First, I want to set the v-speed. I want to check to see if the v-speed is greater than 0. So I use this if variable. Variable we're testing against is v-speed. We're trying to see if Zool is falling. If Zool is falling, that means this v-speed is greater than 0. Then what we do is we take this assigned variable and attach it to this right side. It will put it down below if you do that. We'll set the z-state to fall. We'll increase the gravity force to 2, and then we'll set the gravity direction to 270. That all has to happen in the end step event. So now that we have Zool falling, we have to put it in a collision with object solid. So over here, again, we're in object Zool air. When object Zool air collides with the ground, these are the things that have to happen. And these are very similar to the things that happened over when object Zool land collided with the ground. We're doing the pretty much the same thing. We're setting x equal to x previous. We're setting y equal to y previous, so just moving it back to its previous position. And then we moved in contact in the direction it was falling. And here it's a little different. Before in land, we're only moving horizontally, we're not falling, so we set the h speed to 0. But here we're just going to set the speed to 0. That will set the vertical and the horizontal speeds to 0, which you need to do. And then once you stop moving, you want to check to see if the solid object you happen to have collided with is the platform. Now I looked around in GameMaker and looking for a check object function or one of these drag and drop things, and I could not find it anywhere. And so I dropped down to GML, and I'm using this one function called place meeting, and that one does the same thing as the old check object action. But what you're doing is you're trying to see if there's anything below you. In this case, we're trying to see if there's an object platform 1 pixel below our current location. So our current location is XY. So we use XY, but if we want to see 1 pixel below Y where we are, then we say Y plus 1. And it looks just below the collision mask to see if there's a platform down there. And if there is, then we know we're on the ground, or at least we know we're on a platform. And so we change the instance to object Zool land, and we make sure to call the destroy and the create events of the objects we're changing from and to. And if we do all that, then it looks like Zool will actually change states and behave correctly. Last thing we want to do in object Zool air is this key up space event. So you want to say here key up and space, that event. We want to add that to object Zool air. What do we want to do in that event? We're going to make it so that Zool can jump a little higher if they hold down the space bar as opposed to just tapping on it. So if they happen to let go of the space bar while Zool is flying through the air, we want to increase the gravity from 1.5 to 2 and make it jump a little bit shorter. So gravity increases if you're not holding down the space bar. So if the spacebar ever comes up, it sets gravity back to the normal gravity. Normal gravity in this game is 2, and so we're going to do that. It seems kind of odd here because we haven't done the jump up yet with the spacebar yet. We're kind of anticipating that here, so we got to do that now, I guess. Now. We do need to address, since we have this new object Zool air, and a couple new states, which is the important part, falling and I guess jumping. We haven't done jumping yet, but we will. we need to add those to the draw event of Object Zool. So I'm looking at Object Zool here, and I'm going to the draw event. And I've already done a lot of the coding here as well, just trying to get this to work. What we had before, we had these first two, I think, were in place for right. So when it's facing to the right, we would, if it was standing, then we'd draw the right standing sprite. If it was walking, we had to do this kind of kludgy fix to make it animate, and then went through the walking sprite. Now, both jump and fall sprites aren't animated, so we don't have to do anything kludgy. But we just add additional else-if clauses to our larger if statement. And if it's in the jumping state, then we show the jumping right sprite. And if it's in the falling state, we do the falling right sprite. We do the same thing in the case where it's facing left. So this else part is for the left side. I added additional else-ifs for that. If you're jumping and you're facing left, then you want to go jump left. Otherwise, you're falling. So let's try this. We can't jump and actually see it. What I might want to do is here in my room, I'm going to move Zool up a little higher. So I'll select him, and remember we start with an object Zool in our room, so we can just drag him in there. Object Zool. I'm going to start him up here. And what we should be able to see is him falling, and we'll see if he falls at a decent rate, and we'll see if the camera follows him as he falls. We'll see if our viewport thing is working. You have to watch carefully here because it happens rather quickly. Falling, and then we land. It's a little bit odd there. He's facing left, and I didn't press any left button. I'm wondering what the default is for Object Zool. So we look at Object Zool in its create event. We didn't really set, well, it says here, set facing equal to face left. So even though it looked like he was facing right, because that's the sprite we're using, the default sprite we're using for Object Zool, he ends up facing left when he lands. I kind of dislike that, since we're going to start on the left side of the room. It might be better to face him to the right to begin with. So I'm going to change that to face right. See if that looks better. Oh, I guess the game's still running. Yeah, I think that looks better. Now we're ready to start walking around. So now you can test it out and see if you actually walk. There we go. If you set up your layers properly, you see how he walks between the candy canes? That means you did it right. If we come back on screen, yeah, we're not falling off. Cool. Yeah, we can't jump yet. I'm hitting the space bar, no jumping yet, but at least he's moving around. Now, if you haven't already changed this, you want to make sure you change your room speed to 30. That seems to make everything work well. I'm afraid on our animation, though, it may not be working out. I think we're missing every other frame, but let me do a little experiment. All right, so doing a little experiment here, where up here at the top of the draw method, I'm just adding a show debug message. I'm just showing the image index. This is the current frame number, I guess, that we are on the image, and I'm trying to watch to see what happens to that image index. I've commented out our kludgy code and replaced it with the code that I expect should work properly, but it doesn't. And I'm trying to see what the value of the image index is each time we call the draw event. So I'm going to run it, and if you look down here in the output, this is where you'll see the debug messages. You can actually see the values now of the image index. And you notice that it's just alternating between 0 and, for some reason, 0.50. I thought image indexes were integers, so I'm a little bit surprised to see a number with a fractional part there. You can see when we try to run, it doesn't animate. It just stays on that first one. Now, if I go back now and change it and activate our code where we're trying to manage our image index ourselves. So I'm just returning the way it was when we had it working and commenting out the one that isn't working. I want to see the value of image indexed and see if it's incrementing by 1 as we run through the, or is it going by 2? It's still doing that alternating thing, which is kind of weird when we're just standing there doing nothing. So that's kind of odd. But now I'm running, and we seem to be moving through our indexes. But again, it's strange. If I stop the program, we look at our output. Let's see what was actually changing. See, we're getting these half intervals, which seems kind of odd to me. And what I'm thinking is, what's going on is, if we look at the sprite, here's the Zool sprites, and we're doing the walking sprite, right, let's say. You notice our sprite speed is 15. Even though our room speed's 30, we never used to have this sprite speed. And again, this is one half of the current room speed. So I'm going to see if I change this to 30, whether our index will increment by whole numbers rather than by 0.5 every time. I'll do the same thing with walk left and see if I can get an understanding of what's happening to the image index. I still, for the life of me, don't understand why the image index keeps getting cleared and why we have to manage it. But I guess we have to manually. Let's watch our numbers for our image index as we run. Yeah, we're still getting those half values. So even though I changed it, if I stop the program, we're still getting that 0.5 value every other frame, which seems really weird. So that didn't seem to affect it at all. Although, I don't know if the animation changed at all. Let me see if it looks any different. I suppose it would animate faster. It looks the same to me. Yeah, I don't see a lot of change. So we'll put this back to 15. And then the same thing for walk right. We'll change it back to 15. Walk left, walk right. Here. So it looks like I have a little bit more work to do, trying to figure out why we're getting some weird numbers. Let's look back at our code just one more time to see if I can see anything that gives us half a number. We say, yeah, see, mod operations should only return whole numbers, right? Because it's the remainder. This sprite get number, I'm guessing what that means is it gets the number of sprites that are in the animation. Well, let's see. Sprite, okay, the index of the sprite. The sprite has to have at least one subimage, and this function will return just how many it has. Subimage just starts beginning numbers at 0, so if the function returns 3, the sprite being checked has 3 subimages, but they'll be numbered from 0, 1 to 2. So this gets you the number of sprites, and so that's what we're doing. Going back to our code. Here. So we get the number of sprites in our Zool walk left. I think there's 16 of them. It takes our image index and we increment it, but we also mod it at the same time. So maybe we should make that a two-step process. So we'll increment it, And then what we'll do is we'll say image index mod equals, I don't know if it has that, compound operator. Needs a more understandable way to say that this would be image index mod the number of sprites. So if the image index happens to go above 16, like say we're on frame 15 and we image index gets added one more is 16. So you take 16 divided by 16, well, that'll get you 0, and that's what wraps the image index around so it doesn't keep getting larger. We'll do the same thing here, down here on the left one as well. So I'll just do image index equals image index mod sprite number. Let's see if that gets rid of our problem with image index getting half values. Let's see. Okay, what was that? We'll have to look at that. Yeah, still makes no difference. Very odd. Yeah, so I'm a little bit stumped about why it's doing half values. But if we look carefully, there was something that popped on the screen just for a second. There. Vsync wait times out of bounds, reverting to sleep-based timing. I wonder what that means. Okay, so we have more puzzles to solve. We'll do that in upcoming videos. All right, the last thing we have to do is modify the Zool state or Zool land state object. So let's go back to that. And this is where we're adding the jumping, I think. So we're going to add here's our land state. We're going to add a key press event. Now key press is different than key down because it doesn't repeat. So, and we're doing space bar this time. So what do we want to do? Well, we want to set the vertical speed. So let's see if we can find that. Set vertical. No. Let's just type in vertical and see. All right, so let's just grab this then, and we're just changing our V speed, our vertical speed, and we'll set it to -22, which will make us go up. Now gravity will take over after a while and make us go down, but we'll do that first. Now that we've given Zool a vertical velocity, then we want to do a change instance. So I guess we'll drop in the code for that. So here's our execute code. And I'll have to close these windows so we can see it. And we want to do an instance change. And what are we changing into? Instance change, yeah. Object we want to change this to is object Zool air, the one we just worked on. And we'll set that to true because we want to perform events. And that's it on the space. And then we want to also add a end step event. So we have a begin step. Now we're adding an end step event. So we say step, end step. And what we want to do is we want to see if we're not on a platform. So this is opposite of what we did before. So again, we had to revert to code to do that. So let's do that here. What code do we want to execute? We want to say if, well, I guess we have to say not, so the operator for not is the exclamation point. If not place meeting, and here we say X again and Y plus 1. We're trying to see if there's a platform underneath us. And so we're looking for an object platform. So if there's not an object platform beneath us, then what do we do? Let's find out. Well, if we're not on a platform, then we just want to obviously just transform ourselves into an object Zool Air. So then it'd be another instance change. Instance change is here. What are we changing to? Object Zool Air. Air. And then perform events, yes or true. We'll save this and give this a try. Okay, so now we're running back and forth. Should be able to jump now. Woohoo! I can jump around now. Look at that. I can just jump to my death. I did. Anyway, it's working. I'm excited. So we can jump now. We can run back and forth. We can fall to our death. All in one video. The other nice thing is we're done with the first part. So this is our first part of Zool. We got Zool moving around. I'm ready to start the next part, but this is at least complete enough for us to test Zool out a little bit. All right, thanks.